Welcome to the Johns Eastern Beginner Excel course. In this video, you'll view all the Microsoft Excel tutorials we use for our Johns Eastern Beginner Excel Lunch and Learn. There's a lot to take in at once, so don't be surprised if you need to revisit anything or find yourself unable to remember a particular item. You can always re-watch this video or contact our help desk for additional questions. Let's get started.
The best way to learn about Excel 2013 is to start using it. This is what you see when you start Excel for the first time. You can open an existing workbook over here, or start with a template. Since this is our first time, let's keep it simple and select Blank Workbook. The area down here is where you create your worksheet. And you'll find all the tools you need to work on it up here in this area called the ribbon. In this area, you'll find the name box and formula bar. You'll see what those do as we go along. Now click somewhere in the work area. These little rectangles called cells each hold one piece of information, some text, a number, or a formula. Let's say we want to create a worksheet to track expenses on an expansion project. Type the first budget item and press Enter. There are literally millions of cells in a worksheet, but each one can be identified using this grid system of rows and columns. For example, the address of this cell is C6, column C, row 6. The name box shows which cell is selected. You'll see why addresses are important later. Next, type the other budget items. This is a breakdown of the work required for the expansion project. If the text doesn't fit in the cells, come up here and hold the mouse over the column border until you see a double-headed arrow. Then click and drag the border to widen the column. Now to make our worksheet more interesting, let's add rough estimates for each work item in the next column. To make the numbers look like dollar amounts, we'll add some formatting. First, select the numbers by clicking the first number and dragging the mouse down the list. The gray highlighting and green border mean the cells are selected. Right-click the selection, and the right-click menu opens, along with this box up here called the Mini Toolbar. The Mini Toolbar changes depending on what you select. In this case, it contains commands for formatting the cells. Click the $sign to format the numbers as dollar amounts. Now it's beginning to look more like a worksheet. To make it official, let's add a header row up here so that anyone who looks at the worksheet will know what the data means in each column. Next, let's do something to the data to make it easier to work with. Select the header and data. Click the top left corner, and drag the mouse to the bottom right. This time, instead of right-clicking, just hold the mouse over the selection, and a button appears. Click it, and the Quick Analysis lens opens. This contains a set of tools for helping you analyze your data. Click Tables, and then click Table. And the data is converted to a table. You don't have to do this, but working with data as a table has certain advantages. For example, you can click these arrows to quickly sort or filter the data. You also have a lot of commands and options to choose from up here on the ribbon. For example, we can add a total row to the table or remove the banded rows. While we're up here, let's take a closer look at the ribbon. The commands and options you can work with are organized into these tabs. Most of the commands you'll need are on the Home tab. For example, you can come here to format text and numbers, or change a cell style. The Insert tab has commands for inserting things, like pictures and charts. We'll look at some of the other tabs later in this course. The Table Tools Design tab is called a contextual tab because it appears only when you're working on the table. When you select a cell outside the table, the tab goes away. You'll also see contextual tabs when you're working with other insertable objects, like sparklines and pivot charts. Our worksheet is pretty small now, but there's plenty of room to grow in Excel as your project expands. Probably the most important part of creating a workbook, other than writing it, of course, is saving it. For example, if the power were to go out right now, all of our hard work would be gone, unless we'd saved it to a file. Move up here to this set of commands called the Quick Access Toolbar and click Save. The first time you save a workbook, you come to this area called the Backstage. You won't find any formatting commands here. The Backstage is all about opening, saving, printing, sharing, exporting, and modifying Excel options. In other words, all that behind-the-scenes stuff. When you first save a workbook, you come here to Save As. You choose whether you want to save it to your computer or to the cloud using Office 365 SharePoint or OneDrive. I've already signed in to my online account, so now I can click here and browse for a location on my OneDrive. Enter a file name and click Save. It's just like saving to a computer, except that now I can access the file on any computer connected to the internet. Or I can share it with others by sending an email message containing a link to the online file. When you want to show your workbook to others, click Save one last time. Then click the File tab to go to the Backstage. Click here to print the workbook. See a preview of how the workbook will look after it's printed. Select a printer in the list, then click Print. You can also export your workbook in a number of formats, such as PDF. I've added an Over/Under budget column to the worksheet to help us track our budget as the actual costs begin to come in. But to make that column work, we need to add a formula. In case you hadn't noticed, Excel has already added some formulas for us down here in the total row. Tables can be very useful when it comes to formulas. But to really understand how they work, let's try creating one on our own. Select the first cell in the column. To let Excel know we're entering a formula, type an equal sign. Now there are a number of ways to write a formula. We could type the values in each column with a minus sign between them and get the correct result. But then what would happen if one of the numbers changed? We'd have to rewrite the formula. To solve that problem, we can use cell references. Instead of typing the value of each cell, we'll simply type the cell addresses. To help you keep track of cell references in the formula, Excel puts a colored highlight on the cell. Press Enter, and Excel calculates the formula and displays the result in the cell. Now, because we used cell references, we can change a value, and Excel automatically updates the total. Keep in mind that even though the cell shows the result, the real content of the cell is still the formula. If you wonder if a cell contains a formula, click the cell and look in the formula bar. Also, we can use autofill. Just click this little green handle in the cell and drag it down. And Excel automatically fills the formula to the other cells. It even updates the cell references to point to the right cells. Note that negative values are displayed in parentheses. But for an even easier way to enter formulas, we can use functions. A function does all the formula writing for you. As you saw earlier, you can add a function to the total row by simply clicking this arrow. If you select Sum, Excel adds the subtotal function. But you can add a function to any cell you want. Select a cell, then go to the Formulas tab on the ribbon. Here you have a whole library of functions. Click AutoSum, click Sum, and the function is added to the cell. Now select the cells you want to add and press Enter. Click More Functions to see all the functions available in Excel. I'm going to show you how to write a basic formula to demonstrate a couple of important concepts. First, to help us keep everything straight, let's click this plus sign to add a new worksheet. Then double-click the Worksheet tabs and type names. Now we can add the data. The formula we're going to write will go in this column and use the amounts in these two columns and a percentage amount. We could format the data as a table, but let's leave it as is for this demonstration. The first thing we need is a cell to hold the percentage amount. Pick a cell outside the data and type 0.1. Then come up here to the number group and click the % button to format the cell as a percentage. When we're finished, we'll be able to change this number if we want to calculate a different cost buffer amount with our formula. Now we can enter the formula. The formula adds the material and labor cells and then multiplies that amount by the buffer percentage cell. The asterisk is used to multiply. Press Enter to see what happens. Well, it's pretty obvious this amount is not 10% of the first two columns. And the reason it's not is because I didn't consider calculation order. This is the order in which Excel calculates the parts of a formula. You don't need to remember all the details, just keep in mind that multiplication and division are calculated before addition and subtraction. And in our formula, we wanted Excel to add the first cells, then multiply. To tell Excel to add first, we simply insert parentheses. Now instead of multiplying, then adding, Excel will add the first two numbers, then multiply. Now we can use autofill to add the formula to the other cells. But now we run into another problem. In the first cell, the formula gets its buffer percentage from D20. But in the next cell, the formula refers to D21. And since D21 is empty, the formula multiplies by 0 and returns a value of 0. But why did Excel change this cell reference to D21? Because when you use autofill or copy a formula, Excel uses relative references by default. Here's how that works. In the first cell, the formula refers to these cells in row 6 and D20. When you use autofill, Excel changes the cell reference based on location to row 7 and D21. In most cases, this is what you want. But in this case, we want the formulas to always use the value in this particular cell. To make that happen, we need to change the cell reference to an absolute reference. In the formula, click D20, and then type $signs in front of the D and the 20. The $signs tell Excel that the formula must always refer to the cell in column D in the 20th row. Press Enter. Now when you autofill the cell, all the formulas point to D20. And now we can change the percentage to calculate a different buffer amount. The last thing we'll do is add an estimated cost column that uses a function. With G6 selected, click AutoSum. Excel automatically assumes we want to add the 3 columns to the left. So press Enter, and then autofill the formula to the other cells. In this course, you've learned the basics of creating your first Excel workbook. Where do you go next? Well, try exploring Excel 2013 on your own. For example, you can quickly create charts and use these buttons to add formatting.
You can use Excel to add numbers using formulas, buttons, and functions. Let's take a look. You add numbers in cells by using formulas. A formula always starts with the equal sign. I then enter a number, then a plus sign, then another number, and press Enter. And the cell displays the results. You can add many numbers this way, not just 2. Instead of adding numbers within a cell, you can also reference cells to make adding a bit easier. B2 is equal to 6. B3 is equal to 3. I'll create a formula that adds the cells. I start with an equal sign, click a cell that I want to add, then a plus sign, and then another cell, and press Enter. If I change a number in a cell, the results automatically update. You can also add many cells this way, not just 2. You can even add cells and numbers. I start with the equal sign, click a cell I want to add, then a plus sign, then another cell, then another plus sign, the number, and press Enter. When you double-click a cell, you can see if it has a number or a formula. Or you can look up here in the formula bar. AutoSum makes it easy to add adjacent cells in rows and columns. Click the cell below a column of adjacent cells or to the right of a row of adjacent cells. Then, on the Home tab, click AutoSum and press Enter. Excel adds all of the cells in the column or row. It's really handy. The keyboard shortcut for AutoSum is Alt equals. You can even select an adjacent group of cells and an extra column and row. Click AutoSum, and you get the sum for each row and column and a grand total. AutoSum has a number of options. Choose an option, such as average, and Excel calculates the average for the row. To copy a cell in its formula, click the cell, point to the bottom right of the cell border so that you see a plus sign, hold down your left mouse button, and drag it to the right for a column or down for a row. And the formula is copied into the new cells. When I click inside an AutoSum value, we see it's a formula with a sum function. A function is a predefined formula. It helps you save time. Let me show you. This formula is equal sign, sum, open parenthesis, B2, colon, B5, end parenthesis. The colon indicates a range of cells. The formula adds the range of cells from B2 through B5. It's essentially B2 plus B3 plus B4 plus B5. You can see that when adding a few cells, the sum function will save you time. With larger ranges of cells, it's essential. To create a formula with a sum function, you type the equal sign, sum, open parenthesis, select the range of cells you want to add, and press Enter. The syntax or grammar of the sum function is sum, open parenthesis, number 1, number 2, and so on, and a closing parenthesis. The arguments of a function, in this case, number 1, 2, and so on, are always contained in opening and closing parentheses. Number 1 is required. Square brackets around subsequent arguments indicate they're optional. The arguments are separated by commas. The arguments don't have to literally be numbers, such as 8. They can be numbers from a range of cells, formulas, or the results from other functions. You can use up to a total of 255 arguments. Let's try it out. If I try to use AutoSum here, it only gets the adjacent cells, not the entire column. We can enter the sum function so that it adds the entire column. You do this by entering individual cells. I type equals, sum, open parenthesis, press the Control key so I don't have to type the commas, select the first cell, the next cell, and so on. And finally press Enter. The formula uses the sum function to add the cells. As we previously saw, you can add a range of cells that are adjacent. To add ranges of cells that are not adjacent, type the equal sign, sum, open parentheses, hold down the Control key, select the first range of cells, select the second range of cells, and press Enter. Let's take a closer look at the formula. As always, it starts with an equal sign, then the sum function, open parenthesis, then the first range of cells, D2 colon D3. This is the number 1 argument in the sum function, then a comma, then the next range of cells, D5 colon D6. This is the number 2 argument in the sum function, and then the closing parenthesis. You can sum numbers from different worksheets in the same workbook. I type the equal sign, sum, parenthesis, first cell, comma, select the second cell from a different worksheet, and press enter. As always, the formula starts with an equal sign, then the sum function, open parenthesis. C8 is the number 1 argument in the function, then a comma. In creating the formula, all you have to do is select a cell on a different worksheet, but I thought I'd go through what it looks like in a formula. It starts with an apostrophe, the name of the worksheet, another apostrophe, an exclamation point, and then the cell reference on the other worksheet. AutoSum makes it easy to add adjacent cells in rows and columns. You could type out equal sign A3 plus A4 plus A5 plus A6, but that's tedious. Instead, click the cell to the right of a row or below a column. Then, on the Home tab, click AutoSum, verify that the formula is what you want, and click AutoSum again. AutoSum adds the row or column automatically. It's really handy. When I double-click inside a cell where I'm using AutoSum, I see it's a formula with a sum function. A function is a predefined formula. It helps save you time. The syntax or grammar of the sum function is sum, open parenthesis, arguments like numbers or cell references separated by commas, and finally, close parenthesis. This formula is sum A3 colon A6. The colon indicates a range of cells. This formula adds the cells from A3 through A6. When adding a few cells, the sum function saves you time. With larger ranges of cells, it's essential. If you try to use AutoSum here, it only gets the adjacent cell, not the entire column. Why? Because B5 is empty. If B5 wasn't empty, B3 through B6 would be an adjacent range of cells that AutoSum could recognize. To add cells in ranges of cells that aren't adjacent, sum, hold down the Control key, click the desired cells and ranges of cells, and press Enter. The formula uses the sum function to add the cells containing numbers and ignores the empty cells. Subtraction is similar to addition, but there isn't a subtraction function. To subtract, you use a basic formula like number or cell, minus, the next number or cell, and so on. You can sum numbers where some of them are negative. The keyboard shortcut for AutoSum is Alt equal, and then I press Enter. This is equivalent to 6 minus 3 plus 4 minus 5. You can also subtract the results of one sum function from another. Sum, select a range of cells, minus, sum, select another range of cells, and press Enter. As I mentioned about adding earlier, to multiply cells, you could type out equal sign A3 asterisk A4 asterisk A5 asterisk A6, but that's tedious. To speed things up, use the product function to multiply numbers or cells. Product is similar to the sum function, but instead of adding numbers, it multiplies them. It's another example of how functions help save you time. The syntax of the product function is product, open parenthesis, arguments like numbers or cell references separated by commas, and finally, close parenthesis. To multiply cells and ranges of cells in one formula, product, hold down the Control key, select the desired cells and ranges of cells, and press Enter. The formula uses the product function to multiply cells containing numbers and ignores the empty cells. Division is similar to multiplication, but there isn't a divide function. A basic formula would be number or cell, / the next number or cell, and so on. You can divide the results of one function, such as product, by the results of another, such as sum. This formula divides the product of the cells in B3 through B6 by the sum of the cells in C3 through C6. Excel uses the standard math rules of operator order in formulas. I find the following mnemonic helpful in remembering these. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Parentheses first, innermost if nested, exponents, multiplication and division, left to right, and lastly, addition and subtraction, left to right. Calculations in parentheses are evaluated first, inner to outer if they're nested. In this example, 3 plus 3 is in parentheses, so those numbers are added first. This leaves us with 6 times 5, which is 30. This is an example of nested parentheses. What's in the innermost pair is evaluated first. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and that's added to 3 for a result of 5. Exponents are evaluated next, but they're outside the scope of this course. Multiplication and division are evaluated next, working from left to right. In this example, going from left to right, 30 divided by 5 is 6, and 6 times 3 is 18. With parentheses around 5 times 3, this returns a different result. 5 times 3 is evaluated first, since it's in parentheses, returning 15. Then 30 is divided by 15, resulting in 2. Last in operator order are addition and subtraction, working from left to right. In this example, working from left to right, 5 plus 3 is 8, and 8 minus 6 is 2. Now we'll create more complex formulas using multiple operators, cell references, and functions. We're going to calculate the sales commission based off of the net revenue. To do this, I take the sales price and subtract from it the cost of goods sold. This is in parentheses to ensure it occurs first. I then multiply the net profit by the commission percentage in B4, 3%. This returns the commission. Let's take a look at how this works in a formula. Because the cell references are in parentheses, first the cost of goods sold is subtracted from the sales price. This returns a net profit of $3,200. This is then multiplied by 3%, returning a commission of $96. Now we're going to determine the weighted scores for students. By weighted scores, I mean that different tests account for a different percentage of the student's final grade. Test 1 and 2 each account for 10%, and the midterm and final test each account for 40%. To do this, I multiply the Test 1 score for Bob by its weight. I press F4 after I select the weight value in B3 so that when I copy the formula, the weight for Test 1 will always remain cell B3. This is referred to as absolute cell reference. I then add Bob's midterm score multiplied by its weight in B4 and press F4 again. I follow the same steps for Test 2 and the final test. To copy the formula, I click the cell, put the mouse pointer over the bottom right-hand corner of this cell until I get a black plus sign, click the left mouse button, and drag the border to the right. Here are the weighted scores for the students. Let's take a look at what's happening in this formula for Bob's weighted score. Each of the test scores and their weights are multiplied, resulting in this formula. Then the numbers are added together, resulting in 74.5. What's the value returned by this formula? First, we do the innermost parentheses. 5 minus 3 is 2, resulting in this formula. Next, we do the remaining parentheses. 10 times 2 is 20, and 1 minus 4 is minus 3, resulting in this formula. Now we do multiplication and division from left to right. 6 times 20 is 120, divided by 3 is 40, resulting in this formula. Lastly, we do addition and subtraction from left to right. 4 plus 40 is 44, minus 3 is 41. You can use functions and formulas with multiple operators, including nested parentheses. Functions and cell references are evaluated and treated as the resulting numbers. The parentheses that follow a function name act only as a container for the function's arguments, such as numbers or cell references, and don't affect the order of operations in a formula. Let's take a look at what's happening in this formula. The functions and cell references are evaluated, resulting in this formula. The operations in parentheses occur first, resulting in a formula of 12 minus 3, and this is 9. Now you've got a pretty good idea about how to do basic math in Excel. Charts provide a visual representation of your data, making it easier to analyze. For example, I want to create a chart for sales to see if there's a pattern. I select the cells I want to use for the chart, click the Quick Analysis button, and click the Charts tab. Excel displays recommended charts based on the data in the cells selected. You can hover over each one to see what looks good for your data. Clustered column is great for comparing data, so I click it. And now I have an eye-catching chart of the data. It looks like the summer months are slower and the winter months are busier. We created a clustered column chart in the previous video. In this video, we're going to create pie, bar, and line charts. Each type of chart highlights data differently, and some charts can't be used with some types of data. We'll go over this shortly. To create a pie chart, select the cells you want to chart. Click Quick Analysis and click Charts. Excel displays recommended options based on the data in the cells you select, so the options won't always be the same. I'll show you how to create a chart that isn't a Quick Analysis option shortly. Click the Pie option and your chart's created. You can chart only one data series with a pie chart. In this example, those are the sales figures in cells B2 through B5. I'm going to move and resize the chart so it displays without having to scroll, which will also make it easier to customize, something we'll look at in the next video. I click the chart, hold down the left mouse button, and drag to move it. I scroll down a little, click the bottom right-hand corner of the chart, and drag it up and to the left to make it smaller. Different data displays better in different types of charts. If you try to graph too much data in a pie chart, it looks like this. Not very useful. Now I'm creating a bar chart using the same data we used to create the pie chart. Charting the same data different ways can provide you with a different perspective that may help you discover different insights in the data. We're creating some of the more common chart types, but there are many more options. To create charts that aren't quick analysis options, select the cells you want to chart, click the Insert tab. In the Charts group, we have a lot of options. Click Recommended Charts to see the charts that'll work best with the data you've selected. Click All Charts for even more options. These are all of the different types of charts you can create. As I mentioned earlier, a pie chart isn't a recommended option for the data we selected because it can only display one data series. We can make a pie chart, but it would only show the first data series, the average precipitation for New York, and not the second data series, the average precipitation for Seattle. Instead, let's make a line with markers chart. Click Line with Marker, point to an option, and you get a preview of the chart. Click OK, and we've created our line chart. After you create your chart, you can customize it to show additional chart elements, such as titles and data labels, or to make it look exactly the way you want. We're customizing the pie chart we created in the previous video. To change the title, click it and type the text you want. When you select a title or label's text, you get a context-sensitive menu that enables you to change its formatting, such as font, font size, and font color. If there isn't a chart title, I'll show you how to add one next. To add elements to your chart, such as a title and data labels, select the chart elements, chart styles, and chart filter buttons appear next to the chart. Click the Chart Elements button and check or uncheck the elements you want to add or remove, such as chart title. Different chart types have different elements, styles, and filters. To add data labels, you check Data Labels. They look pretty good, but I want the labels to include sales as a dollar value and as a % of the total. To do that, click the arrow beside Data Labels. I can point to each option and see a preview. None of them give me what I want, so I click More Options. The Format Data Labels task pane appears. A task pane provides you with more options for customizing elements. I click Percentage, and the data labels now contain what I want. We're almost done, but the overall look of the chart isn't exactly what I want. So I click the Chart Style button. When you point to an option, you see a preview of what it'll look like. I think this one looks good, so I click it. And we have our finished pie chart. Now we're customizing the bar chart we created in the previous video. Select the chart, click the Chart Elements button. The bar chart has more elements than the pie chart. I check Data Table, and it's added to the chart. To change the data series for the chart, right-click the chart, click Select Data in the right-click menu, select the chart data range, and click OK. Now that I've seen the data charted, I think a column chart would work better. But I don't have to delete this chart and create a new one from scratch. Instead, I right-click the chart, click Change Chart Type, click Column, It looks good, so I click OK. And now we have a chart that does a great job of presenting the data. Lastly, we're customizing the line chart we created in the previous video. I fill in the title, I also want to add a title for the vertical axis of the chart, the numbers, so people will know what they represent. I click the Chart Elements button, point to Axis Titles, click the arrow beside it, check Primary Vertical, and type inches into the title text box. Data labels would make the chart easier to fully comprehend. I click the Chart Elements button again. If I check Data Labels, it would put the values above the markers, which is a little confusing. When I click the arrow besides Data Labels, I get options for where to place them. I get a live preview when I point to an option. Bright looks good, so I click it. To filter the data in a chart, click the Chart Filter button, uncheck items you don't want to display, and click Apply. You check items and click Apply to display them. You can double-click a chart or virtually any element in a chart for even more customization options. I'm adding a finishing touch to the chart. I double-click the chart, expand Fill in the task pane, and select Gradient Fill. Lastly, I make the chart a little bigger, and we finished our chart. You can emphasize different types of data, such as temperature and precipitation, by combining two or more chart types in one combo chart. Different types of data often have different value ranges, and with a combo chart, you can include a secondary axis. Select the cells you want to chart. Combo chart isn't a quick analysis option, so we click the Insert tab on the ribbon, click the Combo button, and choose an option. I'm moving and resizing the chart to make it easier to work with. I give the chart a title, adding a secondary axis for precipitation will make the chart easier to understand. I double-click the precipitation line in the chart and select Secondary Axis in the task pane. It would make the chart even clearer if we added axis titles. Click the Chart Element button, click the arrow besides Axis Titles, select Primary Vertical and Secondary Vertical, click the title boxes, and type the appropriate text. You can create a chart in an Excel worksheet and copy it to another worksheet. You can also create a chart in Word or PowerPoint, but copying one from Excel is often more effective because there are different ways to paste the chart into the other programs. To copy a chart to another worksheet in the same or a different workbook, right-click the chart and click Copy. I already have another workbook open, so I'm pressing the Alt-Tab keys to bring it to the forefront. This workbook has a different theme applied. Click the tab of the worksheet you want to paste the chart onto. Click the cell where you want the upper left-hand corner of the chart, and right-click the cell. There are 3 Paste buttons, as well as Paste Special. You can paste and use the Destination Workbook's theme, paste and use the formatting from the source workbook. When you point to a button, you get a live preview. With both of these options, if you change the data for the chart updates automatically. You can also paste the chart as a picture. With this option, the chart can't be updated or edited. Paste Special provides more options for pasting as different picture formats. I'm going to paste it using the workbook's theme. To paste the chart to another Office application, such as Word, copy the chart. I already have a document opened. It also has a different theme applied. Right-click the document. If you want to keep the data with the chart, where you can edit it, but not have it linked to the source worksheet, choose Use Destination Theme and Embed Workbook, or Keep Source Formatting and Embed Workbook. If you want to keep the chart linked to the source worksheet so that changes you make to the data in the source worksheet updates the chart in Word, choose Use Destination Theme and Link Data, or Keep Source Formatting and Link Data. You can also paste the chart as a picture. I'm going to select the Use Destination Theme and Link Data. This way, it'll blend with the document's theme, but update when I change the data in the source spreadsheet. If the chart in Word doesn't show changes you've made to the data in the source worksheet, in Word, click the chart, click the Chart Tools Design tab, and click Refresh Data. Now you've got a pretty good idea about how to create charts.